What is up, Optimal Health Warriors, and welcome to episode 58 of the Optimal Health Show. In this podcast, I got my good friend Ben Greenfield to drop by and talk about how to biohack your mind, boost your IQ, and improve your memory in 21 days. In this podcast, you'll be learning about how to optimize your brain waves with Binaural Beats, the best supplements to increase brain function, using caprylic acid to boost ketones for brain function, the benefits of nasal breathing for optimal performance, what are the best brain foods for optimal performance, best supplements for optimal performance, and the best nootropics. Now, if you haven't done already, please head over to ameerrosic.com and get a free biohacking toolkit where you can optimize your mind, body, and soul. Now, our special guest today, as I mentioned, is my good friend, Ben Greenfield. Ben Greenfield is a coach, author, speaker, ex-bodybuilder, and Ironman triathlete. His science-based approach is discovering a potent balance between health and performance has revolutionized the way thousands of athletes and exercise enthusiasts around the world live, train, and eat. Ben now works with athletes, CEOs, and soccer moms from around the world to achieve amazing feats of physical endurance without destroying their body in the process. So, warriors, please sit back and relax. Enjoy today's amazing podcast with Ben Greenfield. Hey, Ben, welcome to the Optimal Health Show. How you doing?
Awesome, Ameer. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Right before this call, you and I were talking, and you mentioned you're doing this podcast in front of a barn house or something.
I'm actually at this farm / health retreat in Austin, Texas, because I missed my flight. I didn't miss my flight. My flight kind of got canceled for 2 days in a row, and so I rigged together a little stand-up workstation here. And I'm standing out by the side of the house. Managed to borrow a microphone, and yeah, man, it's the extent to which I go to get on the world famous Ameer Rosic's podcast. So
that's what I call dedication, a true optimal health warrior. Now
that's right, baby.
You were in Austin, Texas, at the Paleo FX and everything. Were you talking about your brand new book, which I absolutely love it, Beyond Training?
Yeah, exactly. That thing just came out about 24 hours ago. So
yeah, it's fresh off the presses. I'm curious though, as many authors, what kind of enticed you at the beginning to start writing this book? Because obviously you've been in the game for a very long time. You've written other books. You've done so much, content driven knowledge out there. And I'm just wondering, was there type of a catalyst or something kind of really push you, yo, Ben, you got to get this book out there?
Sure. So basically, think about it this way. I've got a hodgepodge of, quote unquote recipes out there for everything from hacking your brain to enhancing your recovery to building muscle or losing fat quickly to getting your body ready for the rigors of, say, like a triathlon or a Spartan race or a series of CrossFit events, all sorts of things scattered around on many, many websites on the internet and in many books that I've written before, but never everything in one spot. So I want to take all these recipes I have for getting the most out of your body and your mind and put them all together in one central kind of easy to reference location. So this is kind of the cookbook that resulted. And I simply split everything up into the elements of training, nutrition, lifestyle, recovery, and then the brain, and put it all together. It's a little over 480 pages long and kind of comes in this beautiful hardcover book. And there's about 8 free hidden chapters online that come with the book as well. And but my inspiration was to kind of have this source where, if people just wanted kind of everything all at once, the big hit, so to speak, that they could just have it. And so that's why I put the book together.
How long did it take you to write that? That's huge.
Well, it took about a year to write, but it took about 10 years to learn.
People only see the tip of the iceberg. They don't see the bottom portion of it.
Right. It's like that Picasso analogy where Picasso paints that painting in like 2 minutes flat, and he's like, "That's a Picasso," and Picasso's like, "Yeah, that took me whatever 20 years to actually hone." So
Now, in the book, you mentioned you're talking about recovery, you're talking about biohacking and everything. Now, for the biohackers out there who are super geeky on this, is there any specific areas of biohacking that you really dig deep into?
for biohacks, probably some of the bigger ones are the brain and the sleep components. And then I would say the last one would be recovery. So, getting your muscles and nervous system to recover as quickly as possible, preparing your brain for the best sleep possible, and then also enhancing mental performance through everything from binaural beats to specific nutrient blends and nootropics, things of that nature.
That's awesome. Let's talk about the enhancing your brain. You mentioned the binaural beats and certain like nutrition. What is binaural beats for people who don't know?
So the way the binaural beats work, well, first you need to understand brain waves, which I think some people kind of understand, but you've got your alpha, delta, beta, and theta brain waves. And, many of us live in, for example, a beta brainwave state versus say like a focused, relaxed, kind of in the zone alpha brainwave state. And the actual hertz frequency of the alpha brainwave state is about 8 to 12 hertz. So, what can happen is you can lull your body into an alpha brainwave state by playing two different beats in each ear that are the difference of which results in an 8 to 12 hertz frequency. That would be the alpha brainwave zone. So, you could put on a binaural beat track, and I've got a bunch of links in the book. There's a ton of free ones online. And it would be playing, for example, 395 hertz in your left ear and 405 hertz in your right ear. And by using a combination of those frequencies in both left and right ear, the resultant frequency is a 10 hertz frequency, production of brain waves that are at that 10 hertz frequency. And you could do something similar to engage yourself in, say, like the delta brainwave frequency pre-sleep. Now, I will use something like binaural beats primarily for like a pre-race or very difficult workout where I want to get myself into the alpha brainwave zone. But I use something called pulsed electromagnetic frequency, or PEMF, for more of kind of like the sleep component. So for that delta wave component, I use what's called an earth pulse. So I put an earth pulse underneath my mattress. It emits a frequency of about it's between 7.3 and 7.8 hertz, but it's very close to what the Earth's natural frequency is, what the natural frequency of that would be emitted by the planet Earth is. And it simply emits that underneath my mattress while I'm sleeping, lulls me into that more kind of deep sleep, relaxing, restorative brainwave zone. And there are some other cool things that PEMF does, primarily improvement in mitochondrial health and cell membrane healing. And that's another kind of cool modality that I use. But yeah, the binaural beats thing, it's basically a simple audio track that you play, and again, you can find binaural beats for free online.
Now, if someone wants to start, like, say, biohacking their brain and becoming, I guess, more or having more clarity, would you say there's any like baseline testing people can do to like then measure their progress?
You could measure, there's a few things you could do. So, for example, if you wanted to see how improvements in the brain were affecting your central nervous system, and in particular, the responsiveness and the strength of your central nervous system, you could grab your phone and download like the CNS Tap Test, which is a basic right finger and left finger tap test that measures how many times you can tap in X number of seconds. And you can track that and log it on a daily basis. And that's a really good corollary to the strength of your nervous system, the ability of you to engage in repetitive contractions over and over again over a very short period of time. So that one's called the CNS, as in Central Nervous System, Tap Test app. Another way that you could do this is by measuring the strength of your nervous system using something called heart rate variability testing, which would mean, for example, like I use an app called the Sweet Beat app for this. So I wake up in the morning, I put on a Bluetooth heart rate monitor, and once I strap that on, I'll turn on the Sweet Beat app, and it will test the strength of both my sympathetic and my parasympathetic nervous system. and that's about a 5-minute test that you can do, but it's a really, really good sign of the strength of your nervous system, which is, again, a very good indicator of neural health. And that type of neural health ties, I find, more often into like neuromuscular recovery and stress, like how well you're doing de-stressing and repairing and recovering your body after a workout, than it does to pure mental performance. I like the CNS Tap Test for mental performance. I also like just gauging how well your brain is performing by tracking your performance on apps. So for example, 2 apps on my phone are Lumosity and NBAC Training. So I'll use Lumosity as a way to engage my game or my brain in novelty and variety and challenge each day. And then the NBAC Training to work on improving working memory and recall. And you could Google either of those.
They got NBAC for the phone now?
Yep, they have NBAC apps for the phone. They have NBAC for the Kindle. I've got an NBAC app on both my phone and my Kindle, so I can play NBAC, for example, anywhere, standing in line at the airport, waiting in line for groceries. Really cool way to just quickly slip into and work your working memory, and that results in a direct improvement in IQ. So, I
think NBAC, they said they're the only ones to clinically proven to actually boost IQ as well.
Yeah, and there are even educational systems in schools using NBAC for children to improve IQ in children, and it's a pretty cool form of training. And for those of you who haven't done NBAC training, it's easier to play the game to see what it means than to actually have it explained to you. But essentially, like a number will flash on a screen, or a calculation such as 3 + 1 will flash on a screen. And then N - 2 NBAC training would mean that after 3 + 1 appears on the screen, and the answer to that is 4, of course. I hope your listeners know that, Ameer. So we get 3 + 1 = 4, and then next it says 5 + 3, and you know that is 8. And then next it'll say 3 + 3, and you know that is 6. And the next question is, what was the answer to the equation 2 equations ago? And you know the answer to that was 4. You say 4, and then you go on. You might do 10 repeats of that, and then it'll go into like an NBAC for a 3 count back and that type of thing. So you're just basically rapidly working your recall based memory while at the same time engaging in simple calculations.
Do you have any other morning rituals for improving your cognition? Maybe some dietary ones or shakes or maybe types of supplements?
I'm big on a gram of curcumin most mornings. The only mornings I'll avoid that is there's some evidence that curcumin may inhibit muscle hypertrophy because it can really shut down formation of free radicals. It's a potent brain anti-inflammatory. But one of the issues is if you're constantly taking in high-dose antioxidants or powerful antioxidants like curcumin, sometimes you can blunt the body's natural response to exercise. So many mornings, I would say 5 out of 7 mornings or so, I'll do curcumin, and more often than that, a lot of times if I'm on the road and I'm traveling and I'm exposed to, the stress from airport X-ray machines and solar radiation while I'm on planes, things like that. But if I'm going to be lifting weights in the morning, I won't take curcumin because I don't want to blunt my muscle building response to lifting weights. So I'll avoid it then. But most mornings I'll start off with about a gram or so of curcumin. I generally, in my smoothie, because for me, most mornings when I'm at home, I'm doing a kale smoothie. One of the things I add to my kale smoothie is caprylic acid because of its ability to rapidly get converted into ketones, which the neurons really like to use as a fuel. And so I'm a big fan of adding about 2 tablespoons or so of caprylic acid to my morning smoothie. That's another one that I'll do in the morning from a nutrient standpoint. As far as other good ones for the brain, one that I'll do about mid-morning on an empty stomach is, and this is just a daily for me. I don't do a ton of supplements daily. Some people think I pop 30 pills a day. I don't. I do a fish oil. I do the curcumin. I do typically before I go to bed at night a magnesium, and most of the rest of the time it's just targeted nutrients when I need them. But this one I'm about to tell you I take every day, and it's just the Chinese adaptogenic herb blend, because adaptogens really, really help you respond to stress. And many of the things that are in adaptogens like eleuthero, ashwagandha, rhodiola, maca root, things of that nature. These also really, really help increase blood flow to the brain. And a couple of ingredients of the Chinese adaptogenic herb blend that I use are cytocholine, which is very, very similar to phosphatidylcholine or the type of choline you'd find in like fish, eggs, walnuts, things of that nature. That's really, really good for both the brain and the eyes. And then it's also got vinpocetine in it and huperzine. And both of those are they're neurotropics. They increase blood flow to the brain. They've even used them in studies done on NFL football players to reverse a lot of the issues created with head damage from years of playing football. And those also are something I find to be really, really helpful in terms of improving focus and improving basically, memory, IQ, reading speed, visual acuity, all the little things you'd want going on with your brain on a typical workday.
Where can people get that adaptogenic mix?
That blend is called Tea and Chi. I get that out of Portland. It's handmade by a Chinese herbologist in Portland. His name is Roger Drummer. I met him a few years ago. He's super duper knowledgeable in the field of Chinese adaptogens, and it's a powder and it's mixed in an extremely dense ratio. You're going to see about a 2-to-1 to a 10-to-1 ratio in terms of the concentration of herbs in most Chinese adaptogenic herb blends on the market, and this is a 40-to-1 ratio. Meaning there it's literally dozens and dozens and dozens of pounds worth of herbs squeezed into one little packet. So it says on the packet to mix it into water. I just dump it straight into my mouth and hold it for 90 seconds and swallow. And then chase that with a glass of water. But that stuff works really well.
Cool. I was talking to you a while ago, and you're mentioning a lot about inversion tables. Have you used them to help you out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking of the brain, not only can using an inversion table, which is just like a table that you can keep out in your garage or whatever to hang upside down on, not only can that increase the capillarization of your brain, meaning it will literally cause growth of new tiny blood vessels in your brain if you hang from that thing for 5 to 10 minutes, just a few times a week. But if you're one of those standing workstation people like me, where you're on your feet all day, and I do that to upregulate lipase, my fat burning enzyme, and also to train a lot of my tiny feet and core and hip muscles to just kind of build endurance throughout the day. One of the things you're going to find is your legs get heavy. Sometimes blood pools in your feet. Sometimes you wonder if you're going to wind up with legs like a Las Vegas waitress, just like varicose veins and all that nasty stuff going on. So that's another place where the inversion table comes in. Is you hang on an inversion table after a day of standing on your feet. It decompresses your spine, drains blood from your feet, your legs, kind of back up into your brain, feed stuff back to your heart. And honestly, like, they're not that expensive. Like, if you buy them new off Amazon, they're kind of spendy. But I tell people this in my book. I'm like, go on Craigslist, type in inversion table. Usually you've got like rich people who thought they were going to get really healthy by hanging from an inversion table, just dumping these things on Craigslist for a few bucks, or even giving them to you if you'll haul them away. And then you just, put it out in your garage like I do. And I like to hang out in the morning sunshine. I'll literally just go out there, when the sun's rising and my garage opens towards the sunrise. So I'll open my garage door and just hang from the inversion table while I stare out at the sunrise, do a little deep breathing, hang there for about 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes max. And then, you feel like $1 million.
Do you incorporate any type of meditative breathing or like breathing modalities in your practice?
Yeah, I do. I don't do a lot of meditation in the traditional sense because I'm an athlete and I tend to swim a lot. I run a lot. I ride my bicycle. I use those times for meditation. And the way that I do that is, aside from when I'm swimming, where I'm not really doing the deep nasal breathing, but when I'm running and I'm cycling, I try and do nasal breathing. When you breathe through your nose, the turbines in your nasal cavities actually circulate air, humidify air, oxygenate air, and the air that winds up at the alveoli in your lungs winds up being better oxygenated and at a temperature that allows for it to saturate your tissues much, much more easily. So there's an exercise and a physiological benefit to nasal breathing, but also there are baroreceptors in your chest that when you engage in shallow chest mouth-based breathing, upregulate cortisol production and increase stress. So what that means is if you go for a run, you can have your run be deep, restorative, oxygenating, stress-reducing activity if you do deep nasal breathing, or you can have it be stressful if you engage in shallow chest breathing. So when I go out for a run, I focus on breathing through my nose, and I'll get into this deep meditative state, especially if I'm like running on a trail. It's just this really cool flow state. And that's one area that really allows me to kind of get a lot of the benefits of meditating and kind of kill two birds with one stone and be exercising at the same time. I take it to the level too where I will engage not just in nasal breathing, but in rhythmic breathing. So rhythmic breathing means that as you're doing something like running, for example, you breathe in for 3-foot strikes and you breathe out for 2-foot strikes. Now, what that means is that you are breathing off CO2 just a little bit less because you're exhaling less than you're inhaling. And it turns out that carbon dioxide and a lack of carbon dioxide in the body is one of the primary regulators of stress and cortisol production. And you'll tend to see a lot of times folks who don't breathe well, they basically almost like hypoventilate, meaning they don't breathe off enough CO2 during the workday. And what that means, or I'm sorry, they breathe off too much CO2 during the workday. These are the type of people who you'll find often engaging in like quick sighs here and there. Like if you're at work and you find yourself just sighing, or maybe doing shallow chest breathing while you're checking emails. A lot of times you're breathing off too much CO2. And if you engage in this rhythmic breathing where you're doing nasal breathing, but also exhaling less than you inhale during exercise, you're avoiding that lack of CO2 and really helping yourself out from a stress standpoint there too. So I do nasal breathing. I do rhythmic breathing. I learned how to do nasal breathing from a book called Body, Mind, Sport by John Douard. He runs a company called the Life Spa in Boulder, Colorado. And I learned how to do rhythmic breathing from a book called Running on Air by Bud Coates. That one was published by Runner's World. And it teaches you this process of how to learn rhythmic breathing. But by combining nasal breathing and rhythmic breathing during exercise, that's my form of meditation. And I don't actually do much in terms of like taking focused mindfulness meditation breaks during work or anything like that. For me, I see the benefit in, for example, meditating, 3 or 5 times a week for 20 minutes. But since I'm out exercising anyways, and I figured out a way to turn that into meditation, I just roll with that.
2 for 1, baby.
That's right. That's right.
Now, is there any kind of foods that you think really helps increase brain neurons?
Yeah, absolutely. Foods for building neurons. Obviously, some of the biggies are going to be some of the same things that really help out with eyesight, those are basically foods that are rich in what's called lutein and zeaxanthin. So wild caught fish and eggs are 2 of them. Interestingly, nature gives us clues, and just like avocados are good for your balls, and celery contains some nitric oxide components in it that are good for erections, and shellfish are good for women's libido. All these things that are shaped like certain things in nature are actually good for certain things. Eggs shaped like an eye, good for the eyes. anyways, though, walnuts are like a little tiny brain, and they're shaped like a brain kind of. And walnuts are really, really good. I like those as an excellent way to give you some DHA for the brain. You've got about 30% of your myelin sheaths that are used for neuromuscular transmission. About 30% of those are made up of oleic acid. And oleic acid, just like the name implies, is something you're going to get from olive oil. So in addition to fish, eggs, and walnuts, I'm a big fan of olive oil. I mentioned some of the actual supplement sources, in addition to food sources, but let me think if there's another one I could give you that'd be good for brain building. I would say that one of the issues with even things like walnuts is some of the conversion of the fatty acids into DHA are not super duper complete compared to some of the animal sources I was talking about, like eggs and fish. But if you're vegan or you're vegetarian and you want to get a more readily available form of DHA, I'm a big fan of going after marine sources where you can use algae-based DHA sources. So like spirulina is really, really good. For some people, that might be considered a supplement more than a food, but I mean, it really is just a plant. Chlorella is also really good. Chlorella is a little bit better for detox than it is as a DHA source, but it's pretty good. And then you can even get like bottled up phytoplankton, like you can get marine phytoplankton sources. And those are, a drop of marine phytoplankton literally contains billions of cells. And that's really, really good. That's a source of DHA as well. If you're vegan or you're vegetarian and you can't do eggs or fish, things of that nature, and you want a little bit more than what you get from walnuts, I'd turn over to some of the things we get from the ocean for some of your DHA.
Is there any nootropics that you're a big fan of? You mentioned some earlier with the adaptogenics, but besides that, anything else?
Yeah, I like, so occasionally I'll use one blend, a piracetam, aniracetam, alpha GPC blend. So one of the websites that I like for bulk powdered nootropics is just called Peak Nootropics. I think it's peaknootropics.com. And a pretty good mix. And you can just put all of this onto like a digital spoon scale and measure it out if you don't want to get like a capsule filler or something like that. But for one dose, you do about 1.5 grams of piracetam, and then you want a 2-to-1 ratio of that to aniracetam, so about 0.75 grams of aniracetam. So you've got 1.5 of piracetam, 0.75 of aniracetam, and then what you want to add is about 500 milligrams of a really concentrated source of choline, because when you take aniracetam and piracetam, those are going to amp up your brain's activity so high that you're going to rapidly deplete choline, which is necessary for nerve transmission in the brain. So take something called alpha GPC, and you'd want about 500 milligrams of alpha GPC, a really potent choline source, along with that piracetam aniracetam blend. So 1.5 grams piracetam, 0.7 grams or 750 milligrams of aniracetam, and 500 milligrams or 0.5 grams of alpha GPC. And you can just put all that onto like a digital spoon scale as you measure it out with a tiny little spoon. And then just dump that all in your mouth and hold it for about 90 seconds. Chase it with a glass of warm water. And that's a really, really good stack. I wouldn't use something like that more than about once a month or so. But if you have that day that you know is going to be super busy, you got to go speak on stage, you're going to be low on sleep, you're at a conference, maybe you're at a bender in Vegas, I don't know. That's a really, really good stack. Something that you could use a little bit more often that's a little bit less capable of potentially producing a little bit of a reliance upon it would just be to simply use caffeine combined with L-theanine, because L-theanine will help to enhance the effects of caffeine while also reducing the anti-wakefulness.
Well, what do you think of like
the
matcha tea, which has like a really good ratio of caffeine to L-theanine?
Matcha tea is good. I'm generally kind of like a coffee in the morning, green tea in the afternoon kind of guy.
Same here.
And then the other thing I'll add into that mix that I'll often do as a nootropic that gives me a little bit extra, talk about 2 for 1, a little extra bang for the buck in the weight room too, is just creatine, about 5 grams of creatine. If you're vegan or vegetarian, take creatine, do 5 grams a day, no doubt. But if you're not, and you're getting enough creatine from meat-based sources, but you just want to use creatine as a nootropic, it does have some nootropic effects. And at about 5 grams per day, there's no need to load or deload or cycle. You can just basically just get a basic like creatine monohydrate powder or creatine capsule, and about 5 grams per day works really, really well if you're doing like a cup of coffee in the morning and some green tea in the afternoon.
Very cool. Ben, if you had to summarize, what would be your number one optimal health tip?
Oh, you're going to love this one, Ameer, and it would be to sleep more. I know you're a real sleep nerd. I slept almost 10 hours last night. I'm usually 7 to 8 hours on days that I'm not really beating myself up with training. If I have a tough training day and I had a tough workout yesterday, I'll be at 9 to 10 hours. Generally, when I'm at home, it's 7 to 8 hours a night. And then I have something called a biomat underneath my mattress at home. And this is just a mat that you lay out on your bed, and it emits infrared waves, which can assist with growth hormone release and which are really healing and restorative for the body. There's even some physicians that use them for cancer. They use it for what's called hyperthermic treatment for cancer. It's also got tourmaline crystals and amethyst crystals embedded in it. And those actually release what are called negative ions. So EMF from computers, from Wi-Fi routers, from travel on airplanes, et cetera, is going to cause you to build up a lot of positive ions in your body. And these negative ions released by these crystalline sources can help to balance that out. So it's got this really healing, therapeutic, restorative effect on the body. I sleep like a baby on that thing every afternoon when I'm at home after lunch. I'll curl up for 40 to 60 minutes on this biomat. I'm a big fan of that. It's something I actually discovered about 3 months or so. I don't talk about it a lot in the book, actually, because unfortunately I discovered it, after I'd sent the book off to the publisher. But that's a relatively new discovery of mine that I'm really liking quite a bit as far as sleep goes. But I would definitely say sleep as my number one.
That's amazing. Those are killer tips. Ben, where can people find your book right now?
Well, it's at beyondtrainingbook.com. It's at all the local booksellers and Amazon and everything too. But if you just want to kind of go to the source and see all the bonuses and stuff that I'm giving away with the book, beyondtrainingbook.com is a perfect place to go.
Well, thank you so much, Ben, for coming on the Optimal Health Show. I'm definitely going to be recommending your book to everyone I know. Till we meet again, my friend, have an amazing day.
Awesome. Thanks, Ameer.